Okay. Who here has heard of REO Speedwagon? All right, huh? Well, one of my that's sad right there. Like recently or in their heyday?
Within the last few years.
Okay. One of my favorite songs they do is called "Riding the Storm Out." It's like one of the biggest requests that I get playing on my guitar when I'm in front of people is that little tune. And as I think about that song and I couple it with, maybe the life of David, he had to do a lot of that, riding out a storm, following this tumultuous time with Bathsheba and his tumultuous time with his children, because after the lies and the adultery and the murder and more lies and cover up, he had to deal with the consequences. Remember, Hosea 8:7 says they sowed the wind and reaped the whirlwind. Well, David knew that quite well. He was someone who knew well how to ride out a particular storm. God had warned him that his family would be in disarray because of the mistakes that he had made, because of the choices that he had made, and he was going to have to deal with those things. And you know what? He did it valiantly. Look at 2 Samuel chapter 12, which we're not going to get too much into that this morning before we get into our lesson. But 2 Samuel chapter 12 really brings out David and his ability to ride this storm out, and how he clung to God in doing so, how his heart was soft and listening to what God wanted, knowing what David needed to be, what he needed to do, how he needed to react in these situations, knowing that he didn't have any right at this point to expect too much. He knew that repercussions were coming, forgiveness notwithstanding. Remember that phrase from last week? Repercussions were coming. He was going to have to deal with the consequences of his sin, forgiveness notwithstanding. Was he forgiven? I believe that he was. It's not up to me to decide whether he was or wasn't. But what I do know is that he had to deal with consequences, and from that I can take so many just amazing lessons from that. So David, chapter 12, really rides out a storm. But it doesn't mean he's out of the woods. With God telling him, because of what you have done, your house will be in disarray. Out comes Absalom, right? Absalom tries to take over his father's throne. And you can think back in Bible history. Thank you. You can think back in Bible history, ever since Cain and Abel, families and even nations, our own nation has had these civil wars. Most of them, well, probably all of them, have had tragic endings. Massive loss of life, or at least some loss of life. And this happened to our man David. As good as David was in listening to God and in being sensitive to who God was and what God wanted, as good as he was in that, he was that bad as a parent. He was out of touch with his children. He was out of touch with his family. And because of that, there was going to be a whirlwind to be reaped. He was going to have to ride out even more of a storm. You remember when David was sent, or Nathan was sent to David. And I think probably the greatest benefit that was there was the fact that Nathan was a friend of David's. You remember Jonathan and how much he was so beneficial to God's servant. And the biggest thing about Jonathan was that he was a friend of David. How important are friends when it comes to riding the storm out in our lives? For David, I don't think you could really measure how important they were. No man is an island. That's been said by a lot of people, and I don't even know where the original quote came from. To quote more music, I know that Simon and Garfunkel said, "I am a rock, I am an island," and you remember that song, right? No man is an island. We all need somebody, regardless of whether you say, "I don't need anybody." Everybody needs somebody, and the sooner we realize that, the better off we are. David, if there's anybody who could have said, "You know what, I'm an island, I don't need anybody, I've got all I need," he could have said it, but he didn't. He couldn't. And in his greatest and darkest hour of need, it was friends that helped him through it. 2 Samuel 15. Got your Bibles there. We're about to deal with a reality that David's own son, Absalom, came up with this 4-year plan on how to unseat his father from the throne. And he not only wanted to take the kingdom, it was well known that he not only wanted to take the kingdom from David, he wanted to kill him as well. If you knew that, and that came to light for you, that your own child wanted to unseat you from your position of authority, whatever it may be, and then when he was done with that, murder you and get you out of the way, how would that make you feel? Would you feel that you had failed as a parent in some regard? You would think. How devastating would that have been? How awful. All of us have dealt with turmoil with our children, but that's turmoil. How hard would that have been? So David, more than ever, is going to need friends at this point in time. First of all, let's kind of go over the value of friendship real quick. We could give a whole bunch of different scenarios or plus marks on the side of friendship. And really, there are some negatives, but if they're true friends, then those negatives normally and usually turn out to be positive things. Friendship is a shelter in the time of storm. It's strength when I'm weak, and all those different cliches we could give it. But what is it really there for? And what can true friends do for our relationships? I mentioned a moment ago that a lot of us like to claim our independence in our own families. We claim our independence in the family of God a lot of times. We claim our independence in the workplace. We claim our independence. Sometimes we even claim our independence from God, as if we can do it on our own. But if you're really mature, actually you know that you need help. Because we got it backwards. We believe that the more mature I am, the more independent I can be. The more grown up I become, the less I need you. All right? But it's the other way around. That as we grow and develop and understand just how needy and spiritually poor we all are, we begin to understand how much we need not only a perfect God, but each other. And that is a revelation when that comes to us. Jesus had 12 friends. 12 people he kept very close. 3 of them I would consider intimate friends. These guys were fishermen. They didn't necessarily have a lot in common as far as occupation was concerned. Jesus was a carpenter. They were fishermen. They didn't probably hang out in the same places. But they did find some common ground, didn't they? Would you say that Jesus needed those men? I would absolutely, unequivocally say that he needed those men. That's why he called them. Remember, and we forget sometimes, as perfect as Jesus was as God, he was also human. He was also a man and had to deal with passion and overcoming it. He had to deal with sin and avoiding it, temptation. He had to deal with all of those things, and he needed these men. And you can go in your mind to the Garden of Gethsemane. And as he would go away and pray, say, wait here for me. Wait and watch. And he'd come back and see them sleeping, and could you not wait with me 1 hour? He needed their presence there. He wanted to know that they were there and supporting him. We all need friends. And as I mentioned before, it's a sign of immaturity to think that you don't need one. Not so much a sign of maturity. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, before we get into 2 Samuel 15, I want to mention again a couple of things about having friends, and I think that'll be useful to us in thinking about our friendships, cultivating intimate relationships with one another that not just are acquaintances, okay, but are more than that. Where you can develop a relationship with a person that you can actually count on them and or feed off of them spiritually. That's why we're here, believe it or not. You are here so that I can feed off of you spiritually, and I am here for you to feed off of me. Now, am I being that type of person, and are you being that type of person? Over 100 times in the Scriptures, friendship and other derivatives of the word are found in Scripture. I think God says a lot about it. There's no substitute for it. Can't substitute something else in your life for friendship that'll, provide the same benefits. We all need someone to care, somebody to assist us, and even to reprove us at some time, don't we? Somebody to set you straight whenever you're not doing what you ought to do. You have that person? Friends must be cultivated. One thing that God would mention. Proverbs chapter 18:24 says, he who has friends must show himself friendly. If you want friends, you can't be a jerk. I'll just say it that way. If you want to make friends, you got to be friendly. You see this guy walking around with his arms crossed and frown on his face. Nobody likes me. Nobody accepts me, so I'm not going to accept them. Right? The Ebenezer Scrooge type. Well, Justin's pointing at himself. Well, the reason that you are not cultivating friends is because you are not showing yourself friendly. Now, I don't know if that's you. You show yourself friendly to me. Is that all an act? No. Oh, okay, good.
I prefer to think of myself as
Civil, all right. We're gonna have a word fight.
Good luck with that.
Okay. So show yourself friendly. You got to reach out sometimes. All of us do, and it's not just you. And it's not just you. All of us have problems sometimes where we become introverted. Where we have this part of our life where I really don't want anybody to know about it, and so I'm not going to reach out. I don't want to go to this particular event, or I don't want to go to this particular thing, and I'm really talking about myself here, where I just don't want to deal with people right now because I've got a habit that I want to indulge in, and I don't want them to see me do it. Okay? You're laughing because you know it's true.
No, we know what it is.
Oh, okay. Hey, I don't care. So we don't want people to know what we're doing, and so we don't reach out. But we have to do that. If we want friends, if we want intimacy, if we want that feed back and forth, we have to do that. Friends impact our lives. They are not neutral, and I shouldn't be neutral as a friend. If you run with good friends, you will become a good person. Makes sense? Do you believe that? If you run with bad friends, well, you're not going to become such a good person. A man by this name of Sid Gillen, you'll be able to find his name in your hymnal. He wrote several Christian hymns. His mother had an interesting way of describing the importance of keeping good company. And this is important in our friends, who our friends are. She told him, you don't work in the garden with white gloves. The gloves will become dirty. The dirt will not become glovey. Okay, good. Our friends are going to have an impact on our lives. Okay? We like to believe that we can jump into a circle of friends and do all the changing. Well, that's possible, depending on what type of person you are. I'm not going to stand up here and say it's not. That you can't change a group of people. But more often than not, you will agree that the company you keep, more often than not, will change you rather than you changing them. Okay, so you have to be extremely careful. Be careful with the company you choose to keep. Okay, friends come in 4 classifications. I want to give you these real quick. These come from Charles Swindoll. First of all, first classification of a friend is an acquaintance. Right? We're going to come back to 1 Samuel 15 in a minute, I promise. And all this will make sense. The first classification is acquaintances. And this is what you experience probably maybe in the workplace, the cashier at the grocery store, somebody that your mom knew whenever you were growing up, or somebody who's an acquaintance. You pass on the street, say, hey, how you been? Whatever, you know their name, but you never would divulge a secret to this individual. You wouldn't tell them the intricate or the details of your life. It's just a type of person that you may shoot the breeze with for a few minutes on the way by. And you say the typical, how are you? What do you think about the weather? But I can't really tell you personal things because you're just an acquaintance, right? That person. So that's the first classification. Second classification is casual friends. You have more contact with these people. You have more common interest. You're around them a little bit more. You may ask a few more specific questions, and you may even answer a few more personal or specific questions with this person. You can laugh and joke with them, rib them a little bit without them getting too upset, and they can rib you a little bit without getting too upset, but that's about as far as it goes. It's a casual friend. You see them more often than the acquaintance. The next level is a close friend. And you start whittling down as far as numbers go, right? A lot of acquaintances, casual friends gets more down, and then you're getting fewer in number as you get to the close friends. You have similar goals in life as these people. You're free to ask them hard questions. You're ready to answer hard questions when they ask them to you. You occasionally do mutual projects together. You may be golf buddies with this individual, or whatever buddies, if you don't play golf. But you're close to these folks. They're a major part of your life. But they are not intimate friends. Right? Acquaintances, casual, close, intimate. All right? People with whom we have regular contact, daily. Spend a few hours with them on a daily basis. All right? Deep commitment in mutual character. Will always answer the hard questions and will always ask the hard questions. There are few of these in our lives, and sometimes for many of us, if there's any at all. A lot of people don't want this level of friendship. But that's what this lesson is about. The dire need for a person like this in our life. The intimate friendship. And you know what? I'm not going to exclude and say that your spouse doesn't count. All right? That does count. But why not reach out, as we talked a little bit more about that, to show ourselves friendly? Wouldn't you say that having more people like that in your life would be better? We think more of something is better in every other aspect of our life, except for friends sometimes. I don't need any more friends. I've got plenty of them. And we keep ourselves from going out and getting more. You ever ask yourself honestly why you do that? And it comes to donuts, you don't do that. Right? Like, I've got plenty of donuts. I don't need any more donuts. No, you go out and you get more donuts. You don't do that with friends. Because sometimes a friend maybe doesn't taste so good, or what he says may not taste so good. His judgment of you may not taste so good. It may not be palatable to who you are and to your life's decision and path. A little information here. If someone ever says to you, a true friend accepts me for who I am. Wrong-o. Okay? Did Nathan do that for David? David, I know you're having a hard time and you really want that lady. And that's okay. You can have her. But God's not so happy. No, that's not what he did, was it? A true friend is going to tell you what you need to hear, not so much what you want to hear. Right? And based on whether or not you're ready to hear it, will determine whether or not that person stays your friend or not. Okay? More honesty. I believe we all definitely need more honesty. All right, to our text. I promised we'd get there. 2 Samuel chapter 15. And remember that David is in a bad way. He's been destroyed by guilt. Domestically, his home's shattered. Rape, conspiracy, murder, all that stuff. Career's destroyed. He's driven from the throne by his own son. All of these things have culminated, all right? Now read chapter 15, verses 1 through 6 with me. After this, Absalom got himself a chariot and horses and 50 men to run before him. And Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the way of the gate. And when any man had a dispute to come before the king for the judgment, Absalom would call to him and say, "From what city are you?" And when he said, "Your servant is of such and such a tribe in Israel," Absalom would say to him, "See, your claims are good and right, but there is no man designated by the king to hear you." Then, verse 4, Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were judge in all the land, that every man with a dispute or cause might come to me, and I would give him justice. And whenever a man came near to pay," notice what he's doing here. He's usurping the authority of his father, okay? Verse 5, and whenever a man came near to pay homage to him, he would put out his hand and take hold of him and kiss him. Thus Absalom did to all of Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Okay, smart kid. He's a politician. He wants their hearts to be removed from their father, or all trust that they had in David to be taken from him and put in Absalom. All right? And so it's no wonder that we see Absalom chipping away at the throne, convincing the people that he was their man, and his plan's really kind of working. Absalom, he wants to get permission from his father to leave. Look at verse 10, going down to verse 10. Well, the king said to him, "Go in peace." So he rose and went to Hebron. He gets permission to leave from David. But Absalom sent secret messengers, verse 10, throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then say, 'Absalom is king at Hebron.'" And this is how they did it. Verse 13. Go on down to verse 13. And a messenger came to David, saying, "The hearts of the men of Israel have gone after Absalom." That means that you've lost them, David. They've gone to your son. We're in big trouble. Then David said to his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, "Arise and let us flee, or else there will be no escape from us from Absalom. Go quickly, lest they overtake us, and quickly bring down ruin on us and strike the city with the edge of the sword." Remember who this is that's causing all this. Let's arise and run away. Look at verse 15. And the king's servant said to the king, "Behold, your servants are ready to do whatever my lord the king decides." Really start paying attention to his
relationships here. So the king went out and all his household after him, and the king left 10 concubines to keep the house. And the king went out and all the people after him, and they halted at the last house. Underline that, or at least mark it in your mind. And they halted at the last house. There's a lot of feeling in that. Get the picture of David looking back one last time. He's about to exit the city, as broken as he is, from all that has happened to him. And now his son has betrayed him. He's looking back at the city that God built for him, named after him, and his son is taking the throne. His son. Imagine how broken that man would have been. Imagine how he would have needed somebody there by his side. The worst time in the world for him to have been alone would have been in this moment. But somebody there. He has a few things packed on his back as far as clothes and whatever. He's got a few provisions, some to drink, some to eat. But what's most important that's coming with him are the people that he cares about, and the people that actually care about him. Hey, would you bring me up that cough drop real quick? It's right beside on the right. Same thing's going to happen as happened last week. Okay, so he comes to the last house, says verse 17. At the last house, David needed somebody to say, I'm there for you. Way to chase him away. Gotta corral him. All right. David must have been thinking, oh man, I wish Jonathan was here. Jonathan wouldn't know what to do. Jonathan was so close to David. But then he has all these people. 5 shelters for David's storm. Okay? Shelter in the time of storm. There's 5 of them that the Bible mentions here. Look, you stop at the last house. Verse 18 says, and all his servants passed by him, and all the Cherethites, and all the Perethites, and all the 600 Gittites who had followed him from Gath, passed on before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, a man from Gath, why do you also go with us? Go back and stay with the king, for you are a foreigner, also an exile from your home. Why are you here? Why are you following me? You came only yesterday, and shall I today make you wander about with us? Since I go, I know not where. Go back and take your brothers with you, that may the Lord show steadfast love and faithfulness to you. But watch this. Ittai answered the king, as the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king shall be, whether for death or for life, there also will your servant be. David has lost every single desirable quality about himself. He no longer occupies the throne. He didn't even fight for it. He says, I'm out of here. Let's go, guys. Pack up your stuff. I'm running. They probably had to keep up with him. He was running so fast. Tuck tail, this great man David. So you would think somebody like Ittai the Gittite, who had come there to be around such an amazing man, would tuck tail himself after seeing such a coward and a cowardly thing done. But he didn't. So what does David have here? David has an intimate friend. Somebody close. Somebody he can confide in. Somebody that loves David through thick and through thin. Now let's continue on here. Verse 22. And David said to Ittai, go then, pass on. So Ittai the Gittite passed on with all his men and all his little ones who were with him. He had little kids with him. And all the lambs slept aloud as all the people passed by. And the king crossed the brook Kidron, and all the people passed toward the wilderness. Here comes some more names. Here comes some more shelters in David's storm. And Abiathar came up, and behold, Zadok verse 24, came also with all the Levites, bearing the ark of the covenant of God, and they set down the ark of God until the people had all passed out of the city. Notice, Abiathar, Zadok. I mean, I'd be made fun of if I had friends named that, but David, he didn't care. Those were good names back then. Right? Hushai the Archite is another one that's mentioned here. Look at verse 29. So Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there. Jonathan, Ahimaaz, I'm just naming some of these friends that are mentioned throughout here. Hushai the Archite in verse 32. Now, get a load of this guy. It says, while David was coming to the summit where God was worshipped, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat torn and a dirt on his head. Do you have dirty friends? No. Hushai the Archite. He was dirty. David said, if you go on with me, you will be a burden to me. Oh, no, I won't, David. Why does the Bible, or why does this all take time to mention these people? I mean, it doesn't seem like really all this matters in the big scheme of David fleeing from Absalom. Verse 37 says, so Hushai, David's friend, came into the city just as Absalom was entering Jerusalem. They hung around. They did his bidding for him. They didn't run away. They were around when David needed them. Why are they all mentioned here? Because they were his friends. His close friends. People that he needed when the chips were down. When he was on his last leg. In chapter 16, verse 2, a few more friends. And the king said to Ziba, why have you brought these? And Ziba answered, the donkeys of the king's household to ride on, the bread and summer fruit and young men for the young men to eat, and the wine for those who faint in the wilderness to drink, bringing good gifts to them. In chapter 17, verses 27 through 29, you've got Shobi, Mechir, and Barzillai. Chapter 17, verse 27. When David came to Mahanaim, Shobi the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the Ammonites, and Mechir the son of Ammiel from Lodabar. Remember who else was from Lodabar? Mephibosheth, right? And Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogelim brought beds, basins, and earthen vessels, wheat and barley and flour, parched grain, beans, lentils, honey and curds, and sheep and cheese from the herd. For David and the people with him to eat, for they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. Why are all these people mentioned? They're David's friends. They're the people that were closest to him. They're the people that loved him, regardless of the situation that had come up. Regardless of David losing everything. Regardless of how he was acting or reacting to the situation, they were there in a time of need. Well, Absalom is killed, chapter 18. Finally. And for David, the bottom completely drops out. Just as you and I would be, we wouldn't be happy about it, all right? There is no good ending to this situation. My son has taken the throne. There's only one way to keep him from going ahead and destroying everything that I've built there and becoming king. There's only one way for this to end. And none of them are desirable. Absalom is killed. Well, Joab comes and speaks the words of a true friend to David. Notice chapter 19, verse 1 beginning. And it was told Joab, behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. Again, chapter 19, verse 2. So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people, and the people heard that day that the king's grieving for his son. And the people stole into the city that day, as people steal in who are ashamed when they flee in battle. The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, "O my son Absalom! O Absalom, my son, my son!" Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, "You have today covered with shame the faces of all your servants, who have this day saved your life, and the lives of your sons and your daughters, and your lives of your wives and your concubines, because you love those who hate you, and hate those who love you. For you have made it clear today that commanders and servants are nothing to you. For today I know that if Absalom were alive, and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased. Now therefore arise, go out and speak kindly to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go, not a man will stay with you this night. And this will be worse for you than all the evil that has come upon you from your youth until now." Then the king arose and took his seat at the gate, and the people were told, "Behold, the king is sitting in the gate," and all the people came before the king. Sometimes when you are in the dark, when you're in a deep cave and you can't seem to get out, a friend comes who needs to talk some sense into you. David was mourning, crying over Absalom. He lost a son. He should have been sad. But Joab comes and says, "You know what? Your focus is in the wrong spot. You love those who hate you, but you hate those who love you. Absalom tried to usurp your throne, and people are here. All your friends are here, waiting to hear a word from the king, waiting to see you take your rightful spot and to be happy that justice has been done. And you're in here mourning for the man that tried to take your life and your kingdom from you. Get straight." Sometimes we need to hear words like that, don't we? Sometimes we need somebody to come to our face and just tell it like it is. Because if they don't, who's going to? Who's going to? I'm quite sure that the providence and grace of God is at work in this particular situation. I'm sure that God was speaking through Joab at this point in time. Now, each of us have those faces that come to mind as I've gone through this lesson and talk about intimate friends and the times when you are riding a storm out, when the going gets very, very tough. You have these people that are flashing through your mind. The people that would take a bullet for you are coming to your mind. And those people are our intimate, true friends. But to me, it's more than comforting to know that God sent us a friend. Somebody that I never reached out to at all. That became my friend even when I wasn't very friendly. One who will carry my load, relieve my pain, and who has already taken a bullet for me. No questions asked. I had to provide nothing on my part. He just did it. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus desires your friendship. He's already offered his, and in so many ways has given what a true friend would give. In the most intimate of settings. Now he's waiting for you to reciprocate that. He's waiting for you to be more than just a casual friend to him. Or even acquaintance, some of us. Some of us are just acquaintances of Jesus. Some of us are casual friends. Some of us are even close. But don't you want to become an intimate friend with the Christ? Where you're ready to hear anything he has to say. Jesus, it doesn't matter what you say to me. I need to hear it because you're my friend and I know you have my best interest at heart. I know it. And you know what, Jesus? I have something to say to you. And you may not want to hear it, but I got to get it off my chest. And you're not going to judge me because you're my friend. an intimate friend. We need those people among us for you and I to become closer like that. We really do. And it doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't mean you need to start dropping barriers. It means I do. And on your end, maybe you say, I need to start dropping some walls so that I can get closer to the people that love me. Isn't that always the case? Work on you, and things between me and you will get better. Or I'll work on me, and things between you and I will get better. This morning I want us to think about friendship between one another, but especially that the Christ has already afforded. And let us not be guilty of spurning such a wonderful opportunity that is Jesus, the friend. Dixon, you have a song prepared yet? Did you pick one?
947.
All right. Let's sing number 947 together and praise and worship to our God.